Hey everyone, and welcome to AMC Movie Talk for movie fans. I'm Crystal Kennedy, and this is the show where we bring you the day's biggest movie news, and of course we give you insight into what it all means. Joining me, as always, is AMC Movie News Senior Editor, Mr. John Campia.
Greetings and salutations, everybody, on this fine and glorious day that our friend Dennis Zen gets back from his trip to Europe.
Yes, we're very excited.
He's at home a little bit jet-lagged right now.
I imagine.
But yeah, it's an exciting day, though, especially for Harry Potter fans.
Harry Potter fans rejoice! It has just been announced that the Wizarding World of Harry Potter is coming back to the big screen again. Not new Harry Potter movies, but rather movies that take place in the Harry Potter world. Warner Brothers and Harry Potter creator J.K. Rowling have made a deal to create a new film series from Rowling's world of witches and wizards inspired by Harry Potter's Hogwarts textbook, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them, and the adventures of the book's fictitious author, Newt Scamander. J.K. Rowling herself will write the screenplay and said the following about the new series. Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them is neither a prequel nor a sequel to the Harry Potter series, but an extension of the Wizarding world. The laws and customs of the hidden magical society will be familiar to anyone who has read the Harry Potter books or seen the films. But Newt's story will start in New York, 70 years before Harry's gets underway. John, what do you think about WB producing Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them?
Not surprised.
Yeah.
Not surprised, by the way. I mean, look, we talked, there was a question came in the mailbag maybe 2 or 3 months ago where somebody basically asked us, hey, how long till there's a Harry Potter reboot? And I said, I think eventually they'll reboot it, or eventually J.K. Rowling's will realize she loved having dump trucks full of money backed up to her house on a daily basis. And she'll maybe write another Harry Potter book. But I said, eventually we're going to go back to that Harry Potter world. Now, I wouldn't have guessed 70 years in the past. I wouldn't have guessed that, but I knew it would be going back. So the whole idea that they're going now, they also said that while it's 70 years prior to the events of Harry Potter, it is going to be in that wizarding world. There are going to be the rules of witchcraft and everything. And they did say we are going to come across a couple of characters that we will probably be familiar with. Now, I'm going out on a limb, and I'm going to guess that probably means Maggie Smith's character, maybe Dumbledore. I don't know how old I'm not a huge Harry Potter knowledgeable person, not like Star Wars. I don't know how old Hagrid's supposed to be, but if he's supposed to be an old giant, then maybe we'll see Hagrid in there. I don't think, though, they're doing this. The impression I get, especially directly from that comment, I don't get the impression that they are going to be making this a proper prequel. This isn't going to be a story that then directly ties into and flows into Harry Potter. I don't think that's the goal here. The goal here is that they're just inhabiting that same universe that they created, only it's totally in a different context, in a different time frame, with totally different people, but obviously they will bring us a few people out. Were you a big Harry Potter fan?
Huge.
Really?
Huge.
So
love
what
them,
did
read
you
the
think
books.
about this
I'm
news?
super excited. I just want, I've been excited to hear that they're going to have a theme park. I've been excited. I love Harry Potter. I love everything about it. So the fact that we're going back there is amazing. One of our chat roll writers was just saying that Harry Potter is one of the best adaptations next to Lord of the Rings, which is so true. So I'm so super excited.
It's a very good point, actually. Like that, whether you love or hate Harry Potter, it is a really wonderful adaptation from the novel to the big screen. Which brings up a great point. I should mention, everybody, that we're actually doing the show live. For those of you who are watching pre-recorded, this doesn't apply to you. But we are actually right now broadcasting this live on our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. So if you want to jump into the chat board, Chris Lee's keeping an eye on the chat board right now. So jump on in there, leave your thoughts and comments, discuss with each other. And then at the end of the show, we're going to be taking some questions live from the chat board. So stick around for that as well. Now, there wasn't an awful lot going on in the world of movie news today. So I thought today would be a really good opportunity to catch up a little bit on some mailbag questions. Like we get I always tell you guys, we get 1,000 mailbag questions a week. We only do 1 or 2 a day. So I thought today we would do a whole bunch more. So Chrisley's got a few mailbag questions pulled out in front of her. Chrisley, what do we got?
I do. Brian Calamus writes, "Hey gang, you guys are my daily addiction with the podcast version. You guys keep talking about the possible upcoming Marvel films after Ant-Man. You mentioned Doctor Strange or Black Panther, even Miss Marvel or Blade as possible new movies. You never talk about a third Thor or Captain America or a Mark Ruffalo Hulk movie. Aren't they strong possibilities?"
That's a great point. Whenever we hear Kevin Feige or anybody from Marvel talking about Phase 3 of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we are always talking, well, we know that Ant-Man, directed by Edgar Wright, is going to be kicking off Phase 3. We know for a fact that's the first movie in Phase 3. But then, we've always been speculating about Doctor Strange, Black Panther, maybe Miss Marvel, maybe Luke Cage. I mean, and there's a lot of different other characters that are possibilities. But you're right. In those discussions, we never get around to talking about, well, what about Thor? What about Captain America? What about another Iron Man? Although it doesn't look like we're going to get another Iron Man before Avengers 3. The way I think they're approaching it is that it's not really uncommon to have a movie and then a sequel 3 years later, right? So let's say Thor is in Avengers 2, which we know he will be. Then it's not unusual to then next see Thor in 3 years in Avengers 3. And it's really not a big deal to not have another Thor standalone film in that gap, because we know he's coming back in Avengers 3. Same thing can be said for Captain America and any other potential roster members they have of the Avengers at that time. So I don't really think they need to do it. And the thing is that Marvel has been hearing the cries of the fans that, Marvel has this amazing roster of characters that they haven't even touched on yet, that a lot of people are crying out for. In particular, a Doctor Strange or Black Panther, things like that people want to see in these movies. Phase 3, look, now they've had Phase 1, they've had Phase 2, they've had a chance to establish their bigger name, more popular characters. Now is the time, in between Avengers 2 and Avengers 3, now is that time to roll the dice a little bit with some lesser known, as far as the general public goes, some lesser known characters and get them on the big screen. So I really doubt that we're going to see Thor 3 in Phase 3. I don't doubt we're going to see Thor 3 eventually, right, but I don't think we're going to see him in Phase 3. I don't think we're going to see a Captain America 3 in Phase 3. We're all fairly certain we're not going to see an Iron Man 4 in Phase 3. I think it's going to be all new characters in Phase 3, and then we'll get to see those recognizable faces once again once we hit Avengers 3.
All right. Eric Brazis writes, "Hey guys, great show. Not long ago you talked about how much praise a director gets for how well a movie turns out, and that got me thinking. Out of all the directors working in Hollywood today, which one could get a studio to agree to fund, let's say, $100 million and distribute a terrible idea for a film based solely on the director's reputation? In other words, who could pitch the absolute worst idea for a movie and still get a green light?"
Wow.
I like that question.
That is a great question, because a lot of people have this image in their head that Hollywood directors, they get to call the shots. And generally speaking, they can't. Like, even a guy, there's one of my favorite stories. I've alluded to this story before, but one of my favorite stories in all of Hollywood was this great story about how M. Night Shyamalan, the Shamhammer, as I affectionately call him, Shamhammer was getting ready to go into pre-production on Lady in the Water, one of the worst films in cinematic history. But he was a pretty hot name at the time. Yeah, he already had one or two disappointing films, but he was still kind of considered the guy. He was the current poster boy. Everybody loved M. Night at that time. And he had written this horrifically terrible script for Lady in the Water. And Disney, the head of Disney and the production of Disney, she had problems with it, and she arranged a dinner meeting with her and M. Night to talk about some of the issues that she had with the script, and that she was hoping she could convince him to change a few things. Like, hey, M. Night, maybe it won't come across so well, you casting yourself as the writer who everybody misunderstands, but whose writing is destined to save the world. Maybe it's not a good idea to do that. Maybe some people might rub them the wrong way. Maybe it's not a good idea to make the real idiot in the film a film critic who, criticizes your films and then have him be devoured by a horrible monster. Maybe that won't come across so well to many people. Or maybe your story just sucks. I don't think she said that. But, and M. Night was so irate and so angry. He's like, that's it, I'm done with you. And he got up and he left Disney, and he doesn't make films with Disney and their partners anymore. And he went on to make, another studio said, okay, you're M. Night, you're pretty hot right now, we'll let you make your movie. And it turned out to be one of the worst films in history. Anyway, so most studios, they don't get starstruck just because a Martin Scorsese walks in,
right,
and hands him a script. Doesn't mean they're going to go, ooh, Martin Scorsese, okay, Martin, whatever you say, we'll do it. No. The thing is, when Martin Scorsese goes into a studio and says, I want to make this movie, you can probably bet your bottom dollar it's a pretty damn good looking movie for them to do, right? And so I got to say, I can only think of one name one director who might have the swagger right now and the chips in his pocket to be able to walk into Paramount Studios or Disney or Warner Brothers or anywhere he wants with a script written by John Campea that he wrote between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. about Sparkles, the magical little toilet gnome who lives in the toilet of your house and comes out at night and has magical adventures. And I wrote that script in an hour. I believe only one man can walk into a studio today and get Sparkles, the magical toilet gnome, and his misadventures made into a movie, and I believe that's Steven Spielberg. I even think if Christopher Nolan walked into Warner Brothers, they'll say, "Are you high?" I think if any director right now walked in with that script, but I believe if Steven Spielberg walked in, he's probably the only guy with enough pull that, look, no studio executive anywhere wants to say no to Steven Spielberg. I'm sure there have been. And I'm sure probably even Steven Spielberg couldn't get Sparkles, the magical toilet gnome made. But if anybody could, it would be Spielberg. If you guys have any other ideas about who, jump in the chat board, mention it in the chat board who you think maybe could get that film made. But as far as I'm concerned, I think only Spielberg could do it. Could you think of anybody else, Kristen?
No, and they're all agreeing with you. We got Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg, and somebody but J.J. Abrams.
I don't think JJ could get that film made.
Just saying.
He doesn't have the track record yet to get that done. All right, what else do we got?
Ashton Colors writes, my question for y'all is what you think the chances are of an Incredibles sequel in 2015. While The Incredibles might not be the greatest movie, it was definitely enjoyable regardless of your age and was a good superhero movie in its own right. With so many sequels coming from lower pedigree franchises and Pixar announcing plans for Finding Dory after already releasing Monsters University and a Toy Story 3, how likely do you think it is that they'll try to find in the family-friendly category for 2015?
Well, I mean, let's get one thing pretty much straight. Everything that Pixar does is family friendly.
Yeah.
Which is one of my favorite. I love that term, by the way, family friendly. See, the difference between Pixar and other animation studios is other animation studios make kid films. Pixar makes good films that are kid friendly. Because, we're talking about The Incredibles. One of my favorite things about The Incredibles, and I think we've actually talked about this before, is that when you watch The Incredibles, there is no way they wrote that film with kids in mind.
No.
You're talking about guys in the latter part of middle age who is, yearning for the glory days of his youth, facing issues of having kids and a family and how to balance all that. But that wasn't written for a 7-year-old.
No.
It was just written as a great movie that also happens to be friendly for kids. And therein lies the genius of a lot of what Pixar does. We've talked several times about, and I've lamented and moaned and complained and whined and cried myself to sleep, asking, shaking my fist to the heavens, why is there not an Incredibles 2?
Yeah.
Why is there a Cars 2, for heaven's sakes, but no Incredibles 2? Why is there a Monsters University? Which, by the way, I liked Monster University, by the way.
I was going to say,
I liked
whoa,
it quite a
whoa.
bit. But how do you have a Monsters University and no Incredibles 2? I just don't understand that. As far as I know, there are still no plans to make Incredibles 2, which, ironically enough, I still believe, out of all the Pixar films, is the one most set up to have sequels. Like, more than Toy Story. Not that it would be better than Toy Story, but more than Toy Story, more than Ratatouille, more than Monsters, definitely more than Cars. The Invincibles. The Incredibles, it was a film that is completely set up and begging to have a sequel. There's so many things you can do with that, so many directions you can go. But they just seem to be really tied to Brad Bird, the brilliant director, of course, who did the first one. Then he did the last Mission Impossible film. He's working on another great film right now for Disney, another live action film. But they just don't want to move without him. And I'm sorry. Normally I'd say that's a good thing, but Pixar is littered with gifted, brilliant storytellers, littered with them. So you could move ahead with it. And by the way, you're asking, hey, could they introduce something like that in 2015? You kind of answered your own question when you brought up Finding Dory, because Finding Dory is Pixar's big offering for 2015. So they do have that coming. So I'm with you, man. I want an Incredibles 2 so badly. I will continue to sing this hallelujah chorus from this pulpit of ours until the day they finally give it to us. So people at Pixar, please listen. Nobody from Pixar is watching this, but please listen.
William Rock writes, hey y'all, I love the show. In the movie industry these days, it seems that no past films are untouchable for a remake. With that to say, do you think any movies or movie series that are untouchable? Do you think that there are any movie or movie series that are untouchable for a remake? Will Harry Potter ever be remade, or the Godfather films, or any other film? I'd love to hear your opinions on this question.
Absolutely. Well, okay, first let me tell you what my philosophy is. My philosophy is this, and it's unpopular. That's fine. I don't mind saying unpopular things. No film should be considered off limits for remakes or reboots. No film should be considered off limits or untouchable. That's my philosophy. However, if you're going to ask me, are there films that are kind of considered untouchable? I think there probably are. You mentioned one great one is The Godfather. It is going to take not only a very ballsy director, it's going to take a very ballsy studio to ever say, we're remaking The Godfather. That because the backlash is going to come from that is unparalleled.
Oh, of course.
So I think The Godfather right now has to pretty much be thought of as untouchable. I'd remake it, but whatever. One of the greatest films of all time, always will be. Doesn't matter how if you make a remake or not. Another one is Wizard of Oz. Now, that may sound strange to say, Wizard of Oz, when, John, we've got all these Wizard of Oz movies coming out. Ah, yes. We have all these, and have for 20 years, have all these other Wizard of Oz stories, right? But you ever notice they all dance around Wizard of Oz? It's like Dorothy of Oz, or, I mean, the most recent Wizard of Oz was really like a prequel to Wizard of Oz, or all this stuff that will dance around it, but nobody has ever wanted to step up and actually remake Wizard of Oz.
Of course not.
Yeah, so that's got to kind of be one that right now has been considered untouchable. Another one, obviously Citizen Kane. There's never been a Gone with the Wind remake. I don't think that'll ever probably happen. I was going, a few years ago I would have said Ben-Hur, but I believe somebody is actually planning on remaking Ben-Hur, which is kind of ballsy. And I'm all for it because my philosophy, remake everything. I don't care. Remake it. Make it the biggest piece of crap ever. It doesn't matter. I still get to hold and treasure my original and it doesn't touch it. But those are the ones. But can you think of any other that would really be considered right now to be off limits and that people wouldn't dare touch?
I can't. I always tend to...
Besides, Mortal Instruments.
Well, come on now. You're just being mean to me.
I'm just being mean. I'm sorry.
It's funny. Whenever we talk about remakes, I always go back to 80s movies because I'm such an 80s baby.
And I
think about like The Labyrinth and The Neverending Story and those timeless movies. The Princess Bride. I mean...
Princess Bride. Oh,
I kind of want to see them remade, but then I kind of don't. But then I kind of do. So I go back and forth with remakes.
Yeah, Princess Bride. By the way, I mentioned a film the other day on the show, and I will mention it probably every 2 months or so, Stardust, which is kind of, I've called it, and I've heard a lot of other people, I think Stardust is the new generation's Princess Bride. I just think it's that good. And it's funny because I mentioned that on the show, and then a bunch of people jumped on and said, in the comment section, a few people said, nah, Stardust wasn't any good. Really? Okay. I mean, we all have our opinions. We all have different opinions. Film's subjective. That's awesome. But for me, I think Stardust is a true classic. Not as good as Princess Bride, but I think it's the new generation's Princess Bride. At least that's how I see it. What else do we got?
We have Roger Moncada writes, as I heard that there is a Warcraft movie coming, I couldn't help to wonder if it's actually going to work. The only video game movie I can think that has not been a disaster is Tomb Raider. There has been so many failures that I almost lost every hope of getting a good video game movie. But I want to hear what you guys think about it. Do you think there is a future for video game movies, or should we leave them for the consoles? Thanks for the great show and keep up the great work.
Well, thank you so much for the question and the nice, kind words. We talk about video game movies. This topic comes up quite a bit. My whole view of the video game movie thing is this: there are 3 rules in life: death, taxes, video game movies suck. That just seems to be a law of nature. But you're right. I agree with you, actually. I've always kind of said the one video game movie that I have not found totally disappointing was the original Tomb Raider. I actually think that movie had its merits, and I actually didn't mind it all that much. I didn't love it. It's no great classic, but not bad. Everything else sucks. That's just sucks. And I've always said this. video games and movies are two very different things. I mean, really, people try to disagree with me about this, and I'm sorry. If you really just sit down and think logically, you can be playing a video game, and it might feel like you have hours and hours and hours and hours of narrative in it. There's not. I mean, I remember these guys talking once at BlizzardCon, and one of the things is that, really, the challenge of game makers who are trying to make a compelling story to go into the game, really what they do, they try to distill it down so you have about a 20-minute narrative that then in a game that's made properly will feel like hours and hours and hours and hours. I mean, that's really what it's about. Narrative, because video games are made for gameplay. That's the way it should be. Mm-hmm. You don't buy a video game so you can get a great story. I mean, great stories help the game experience, absolutely. But you buy a video game for the gameplay. That's what you get a video game for. And if you can have great narrative in there too, that enhances the gameplay, that's awesome. But movies are not made for gameplay. Movies are strictly made for narrative. And so you have two different worlds, two different things. And I think quite often, a lot of video game fans erroneously say that, oh, you got to really stick to the game to make the movie any good. No, that's nonsense, because the narrative you played in the game was never made for a big screen presentation. It was made for gameplay, and you got to adapt things for the big screen. The trick is getting it into the right skilled hands that can take that story and adapt it properly and make something great out of it. The key is definitely not just take what's in the game beat for beat, word for word, and put it on the big screen and people will love it. No, they won't. They just won't. So there has to be an element of adaptation and proper adaptation, and usually the problem has been the adaptations have been terrible. But I've said for a long time, I think there is hope moving on, because I look at some games that really have a playground in front of them for some great narrative storytelling, because there's big open-endedness. Like, one of the reasons I believe a World of Warcraft film can work and work really well is because the World of Warcraft is so vast and so big that there's a lot of playroom for a skilled writer to step in there and make up his story that still follows the rules of the World of Warcraft universe. Mm-hmm. I believe that the upcoming Michael Fassbender project, Assassin's Creed, I believe that has great character, a great mythology, but there's also playroom in there for a really skilled writer to go in there and make up a great story to fit within that mythology that Assassin's Creed has made. And I believe that they do games like that properly and right, I think you can have a great movie. The key is not just to get a great game and say, oh, since that game is great, it'll make a great movie. Mm-hmm. No, there are a lot of great games that wouldn't make good movies. But I think like Assassin's Creed, World of Warcraft, I really wanted a BioShock movie. I think a BioShock movie would be brilliant. Or at least have the potential to be brilliant. So I think there's hope. Even though I believe all video game movies suck, I think there is hope. I do. I think there is hope for the genre. I really do.
I loved Tomb Raider, and I'm super excited for Assassin's Creed. So
oh yeah, I'm excited for it too.
Hope. Tim Platt writes, "Hey AMC Movie Talk crew, absolutely addicted to your show. I watch it every day. The other day I heard you guys talking about your favorite comic book movies, and it made me think of this question. Who is your favorite movie villain, comic or non-comic, of all time? Would greatly love to hear your responses. Keep up the great work." That is such a tough question.
It's a tough question, but an easy one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I mean, look, there are... the key for any great action film, or really great any film really, is to have a really great, solid, strong villain. Actually, if you look at the J.J. Abrams films, I loved the first Star Trek film. I really did. Mm-hmm. But if you're going to ask me what is the biggest weakness of that film, the biggest weakness was Nero. It wasn't a strong villain. Nero was played brilliantly by a brilliant actor, but still the character itself that they created was kind of weak and really not all that present very often. And to me, that was the biggest hindrance of the film, if you want to use words like that. I even think they underused Khan. I loved Khan in Star Trek 2. I loved him, but they underused him. He should have been there more, and they shouldn't have worried about keeping his identity a secret. We all knew. Come on. He's the biggest marketing tool you have, saying Khan. They should have been in all the trailers. Khan! And they should have run with that and then used him more in the film instead of having this pseudo poorly attempted suspense build-up to the big reveal that he is Khan that comes not till the third act. Big wasted opportunity. I think that's one of the biggest weaknesses of Abrams' movies so far, which is weird because his TV shows often have really great villains. But anyway, I'm getting off on a tangent. So some of my all-time favorite movie villains, and I'm sure if I sat down with a list, maybe I can come up with some other names. I've always loved Chiwetel Ejiofor's agent in Serenity. One of the most awesome screen villains ever. I loved him. Of course, Hans Gruber in the first Die Hard has to be up there as well. You know, and the thing about Hans Gruber is he's still kind of, for a lot of movies, kind of the standard by which, hey, if you're making a movie and you're trying to make a bad guy, how does he measure up to Hans Gruber? I mean, that's actually asked a lot around Hollywood. So that's one of the greats. But there's no doubt, there is no doubt, the single greatest all-time villain in cinematic history is the Dark Lord of the Sith. It's Darth Vader. Obviously, it's Darth Vader. There is no answer B, C, or D. It's Darth Vader. Come on. Now, of course, I say that understanding that all film is subjective and you're totally entitled to your opinion. So I'm just speaking, with hyperbole. But you're crazy if you don't think Darth Vader is the greatest cinematic villain in history. You don't even have to be a Star Wars fan to know that Darth Vader is the greatest villain in cinematic history. I mean, sure. And then you got some great animated villains as well, like Cruella de Vil. Who will ever forget her? Yes. Is a great. Scar in Lion King is a great villain. There are a lot of great villains out there, but Darth Vader. What about you, Chris Lee? Who would you, when you think of like big movie villains, who jumps out to you as being some of the scariest to you, the ones that you would worry about the most, that you really loved?
It's funny, and I'm totally agreeing with a lot of people in the comment section right now. Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal Lecter.
Yeah.
It's a big one in the comment section. Yeah, they're also agreeing with Darth Vader, but I'm going to agree that movie bothered me for quite some time. So that's a good villain. And as far as people who played villains, one of my favorite villains that I've seen in the last couple of years in superhero movies was Heath Ledger as the Joker in The Dark Knight.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. Heath Ledger. And speaking in the comic book genre too, Magneto. Magneto is just an amazing villain as well. But to me, everything starts and stops with Lord Vader. But that's just me. All right. What's
big surprise.
The last
big
question
surprise.
That we got? Big surprise.
Santos writes, let me start off by saying you are all God sent.
Oh,
thank you, Santos.
Thank you.
I love the show. I know 2015 is going to be the Woodstock of blockbuster films and movies in general. So my question is, say some unfortunate event deprived you the ability to see all but one movie that year. What movie would it be and why?
Oh, my God.
Santos is no longer my friend.
No longer. Okay, so out of the entire roster of all these movies that are coming in 2015...
There's too many.
And you can't see any of them except one. Okay, look, obviously I'm dying to see the new Avengers, obviously. Obviously, since I was 17 years old or maybe even 16 years old or 15 years old, when The Dark Knight Returns first came out, the graphic novel first came out, I have been dying to see Batman versus Superman on screen. I've been dying for that. Obviously, it's a Pixar film. I'm looking forward to Finding Dory. Obviously, I want to see Ted 2. Obviously, I'm very curious about the Fantastic Four reboot because it's being directed by the guy who directed Chronicle, which I really loved. A lot of great films. But when you're talking to me, look, I'm not a good litmus test for what the public might think. Because if you know me at all, you know what I'm going to say. I am a born through and through. I am infected with the Star Wars virus.
Yes, you are.
Star Wars, talking from a fandom and a geek point of view, Star Wars is my life. Everything about my creative life growing up. It's my earliest childhood memory. My mom taking me to see Star Wars. I named my first pet. It was a cat. Named it Luke Skywalker. I had the Star Wars pajamas and the bed sheets and whatever kind of stuff. My first fan fiction I wrote was a Star Wars fan fiction. After learning real tabletop role-playing games, not the stuff you play on consoles, real desktop, pencil, paper, dice, role-playing games with Dungeons and Dragons, the very next thing I moved on to was the West End Games D6 or 60s Star Wars thing. Actually, me and my buddies, right up to about last year, me and some friends, we still get together. And we pull out our books, and we pull out our paper and our pencils and our dice, and we play the Star Wars role-playing game. So shut your filthy mouth. You got a problem with that. And we still do that. I mean, Star Wars is everything to me, which is, one of the greatest moments of my life, obviously besides my marriage, was, had to say that, honey, was when I actually got to go and make my pilgrimage to Mecca. I got to go and was invited to come to Skywalker Ranch. That was nothing short of a religious moment for me. And to walk around Skywalker Sound and to be there. And it was, So, if you're going to ask me in 2015 if I could only watch one film, it would kill me to miss all those other great ones. But obviously the one I would have to pick is Star Wars. But that's just me. What about you, Chris? If you could only pick one film in 2015, which one would you want to go see?
It can't be Mortal Instruments 2, right? Sorry, I had to go there. I just had to. There's so many. I don't know that I could. I don't know. Because honestly, Star Wars wouldn't be my pick. But I don't know what would. The list is just nonstop.
Thank you so much for joining us for your final episode of AMC Movie Talk. Chris, it's been nice having you. No, really. But no, you had to. You only got to pick one. There were like 20 movie tickets on the table, and you were only allowed to pick up one. You had to do it right now. Which one would you pick up?
Man of Steel 2.
Okay, that's a good one.
Because I have faith in Ben Affleck, because the first one was not my favorite. So I'm going to give that the benefit of the doubt that Ben Affleck is going to redeem it for me.
See, Man of Steel 2 is my favorite movie of the year so far. But that's the great thing about movies. All subjective. So let us know what you think in the chat board. Hey, listen, guys, that's all the stuff that we've got right now. But since we're doing this live, we would be remiss not to take some questions from you guys in the chat board. So I know there's a whole bunch in there. So Chris Lee's been keeping an eye on the chat board. Chris Lee, do we got any good questions from the chat board?
We do. We have one that I thought was really interesting just because you and I were kind of talking about Spider-Man the other day. So Jonas Norden wrote, and he said, could they make an Andrew Garfield, Tobey Maguire crossover Spider-Man movie? And if not, could they set up a Miles Morales standalone movie, then make a crossover out of that?
No, I don't think we're ever going to see a Miles. Well, saying never is harsh. Look, for the foreseeable future, the Morales Spider-Man is not something they're going to do, because to the general public, nobody knows who Miles Morales is. To the general public. To the comic book nerds, yes. But to the general public, Spider-Man is Peter Parker, and they're always going to keep it that way, at least for the long foreseeable future. Could they cross over? It's an interesting question, the Andrew Garfield and the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man. I mean, it's all Sony. They own the rights. I mean, they could do it if they wanted to, but considering they're two completely different universes and two different realities and everything like that, I don't see why they would. I mean, it's an interesting question. Could they theoretically? They're both Sony. Therefore, yes, theoretically they could do it, but I don't see any benefit. Quite honestly, I don't see any desire from most people that I wouldn't want to see it. I don't see the point in it, but that's just me personally. It's a very interesting question, though.
I thought so too. Let me just, sorry. Doodler93 writes, hey MC, awesome show with Ben Affleck starring as older veteran Batman. Do you suppose the new movies will take place in present day with flashbacks of key events and first encounter of villains?
You know what? That's a great question. I was just having this conversation. I had this conversation with Dennis actually just before he left for his holiday. And I believe, yes, and here's more key to the point. I believe in Man of Steel 2, we're going to see flashbacks to Man of Steel 1. And what I think we're going to see is, as the fight between Zod and Superman is going on in Man of Steel 1, I believe they're going to insert things of Ben Affleck, Batman, rushing through the city in various situations and rescuing people and saving people from the destruction that's happening as a result of Zod attacking Superman. I believe we're going to see Batman in there. I'm going to propose, actually, even, that they might, I have nothing to base this on, total speculation, all right? I'm willing to bet, too, you know how Lois Lane found Clark? I think it was at his father's grave or something like that, and they were talking there. I'm almost willing to bet that Batman was on to Clark Kent before he ever revealed himself as Superman. And I'm almost willing to bet there's going to be a scene where we see Lois Lane and Clark Kent standing there in the father's grave where she finally confronts him. Hey, I know you're the alien and blah, blah, blah.
Right.
And I believe back behind some building or behind some tree, you're going to see Ben Affleck. And he knew it all along and that he was there too. I bet they're going to use flashbacks to show that Batman is the greatest detective in the world, that he was onto what was going on in Metropolis with this, do-gooder going around and figured everything out before he ever got the Superman costume and took to air. I'm not willing to bet much because I'm probably dead wrong. But these are the things that dance around in my imagination. So yes, I do believe they'll do flashbacks to establish Ben Affleck as his hero without having to go into an origin story. But they'll use like very skillfully put together 1 and 2 minute just flashback sequences that kind of just say, this is him being Batman as he was 21. This is him being Batman as 30. This is him now being Batman at 40. And they'll do it very quickly. No origin story needed. And I think part of that will be peppering in the events of Man of Steel 1. So let's take a couple more.
Taylor Burns wants to know if we've heard anything about Zoolander 2.
Man, right up there.
I know.
With Incredibles, I love Zoolander. I love Zoolander. Because what does she say when they're sitting around, toasting whatever? And she goes, I grew up and I realized I was bulimic. And then Owen Wilson's like, you can read minds? Zoolander has so many quotable moments. I love that. Hey, you better listen to your friend Billy Zane. He's a cool guy. Come on. That movie is so gold.
So good.
Honestly, I don't know how Ben Stiller has made some of the crap that he's made. And I love Ben Stiller. I think he's made some great movies. But he's also, everybody has a bad day at the office. He's made a couple of crap ones. Like, remember the Watch? It was called The Neighborhood Watch when he just did with Jonah Hill.
So bad.
With the aliens. So
bad.
Ben, how do you make that movie instead of making Zoolander 2? People want to see Zoolander 2.
Yeah.
Okay, so as far as of what I know Affleck has had a script written. Or an Affleck. Ben Stiller. That's the other Ben we're still talking about. Ben Stiller is Batman. So I know Stiller had a script. And he was working on it, and they were looking to get the financing together, and they were going to be putting it together, and they said, I'm just going to make some changes, blah, blah, blah. But that was like 2.5 years ago that I heard all that. I honestly do not know what the current status is, except that he's got this new movie coming out, and the name of it is eluding me right now, with all the posters coming out where he's walking up the side of the building, and it's him having daydreams and fantasies and whatever, and Kristen Wiig's in it with him. That's kind of his passion project that he's been wanting to get off the ground for like 10 years. So all of his attention is paid to that right now. But I really hope they do Zoolander before he and Owen both get a little bit too old to do it. I think it would be good because the gasoline fight, the freak gasoline fight accident is one of my top 10 funniest moments in films in history. And I want to see Zoolander 2, but no, I don't have anything concrete about where it is or when we might get it.
So sad.
Very sad.
I would like to see another Zoolander. So a couple different people have been asking similar questions. So I'm just going to round it out with saying, do you have any idea who will be playing Ant-Man?
Okay, so I'll give you a little bit of a story, a little bit of history, okay? So about 3 years ago, has it been that long since we found out Edgar Wright was directing Ant-Man?
Mm-hmm.
About 3 years ago, I had a fairly reputable person, and I can't say who, said to me that, oh dear heavens, whenever I try to name him, his name eludes me. He won the Academy Award for The Pianist and kissed Halle Berry on stage at the Oscars.
Oh, I can never think of his name either, but he's an odd-looking duck.
And he's got the nose, and he was just, Chapboard, quick, help me out. He was just in that Predators movie as well, a little while ago. So Chapboard, throw it in there. Just pull up his name when they mention who it is. But I heard that he was going to be Ant-Man. And I hopped on Twitter and I said, hey, look, just take this for what it's worth.
Adrian Brody, thank
you so much.
You're welcome.
And the next time I talk about this story, I'll still forget. So I was told that Adrian Brody was going to be Ant-Man, that they were landing up Adrian Brody. And I thought about it, it's like, actually, that kind of makes sense. He's an Academy Award-winning actor. He's actually kind of got the look of a nerdy scientist, but he's actually physically really in good shape at the same time, blah, 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 blah. So I hop on Twitter and say, hey, look, take this for what it's worth. But I mean, I just heard that, I've just been told that by somebody that Adrian Brody was going to be Ant-Man. So anyway, shortly after that, I'm at Comic-Con, and Edgar Wright is actually doing a panel with me. And Edgar Wright, in no uncertain terms, was like, oh, yeah, the Adrian Brody thing. Nah. So, I mean, that's all he said. But I'm telling you, right? If we find out in the next month or two, if they suddenly announce Adrian Brody as Ant-Man, I'm gonna give him a big "I told you so." But no, I don't think it's gonna be Adrian Brody anymore either. Obviously, the big names that always come up that people really want to see. We want to see Nathan Fillion as Ant-Man because we want to see him in this Marvel Cinematic Universe, and Ant-Man would be a great fit for him. Obviously, another name that comes up a lot is Simon Pegg.
I was just gonna say that. Because
Simon Pegg has worked with Edgar for so many years and they're best mates and all this kind of stuff. But I don't think it's going to be Simon Pegg. I don't think they're going to go that route. Honestly, I don't know. I still believe it'll be Nathan Fillion, but I'm probably wrong. I'm not so convinced about that. So I would love it to be Nathan Fillion. I think it would be a great choice. Throw some of your choices in there into the chat board. Tell us who you think you could see playing that type of role. But I don't think it'll be Pegg. It probably won't be Nathan Fillion. But of any names, if I had to pick one, that's the one I would still personally pick.
We just want to see Nathan Fillion as a superhero.
I just want to see him in a big blockbuster film.
Yes.
That's the dude. No other actor in Hollywood has so much geek cred and so deserves to be in like a big blockbuster franchise like that than Nathan Fillion. He deserves to be there. It's funny because me and my friends, we're actually going to have a Slither night on Wednesday, which, by the way, I hope you got the invitation to that. We're going to have a Slither night next week where we're going to watch, speaking of Nathan Fillion, and James Gunn, who is directing Guardians of the Galaxy, directed Slither. So there you go. All right, we got time for, oh my gosh, this show's already got almost 45 minutes. Let's take one more.
Oh my goodness.
Pressure's on.
The pressure's so on for the last question because you know what? Everything's about Batman right now. It seems like everything's about Batman
All right, ask
and
a Batman
Avengers.
question.
But there was a great Avengers question.
As long as it's not about Christian Bale coming back as Batman, then we're totally fine.
No, actually, there was a great Avengers question. It's who would the one character be that you would bring into the Avengers that we haven't seen yet?
Oh, wow.
I just don't remember who asked it. I'm sorry.
Who would be the one Avenger that we haven't seen out there yet that I would bring into the Avengers? Okay, well, let's keep it within the world of possibility, i.e. not one of the characters who belongs to one of the other studios. So no Spider-Man, nobody in the X-Men universe, nobody in the Fantastic Four universe. So let's keep it within the ones that we have here. I'd say Black Panther. I'd like to see Black Panther.
Yeah.
There's just so much with the mythology with his country and vibranium. It seems it even feels like they might have been suggesting it and hinting at him for a long time. And one of the reasons that I would really like to see him is because I think Black Panther is not one of my all-time favorite characters, but considering what he does, I think he would look awesome on screen. Action sequences with Black Panther done right would look phenomenal. For me, I would say, I mean, obviously there are a lot of other, there's a huge pantheon of Marvel characters that would all be great, I'm sure. But for all those reasons I mentioned and a few others, I would personally say Black Panther. Who would you say, Chrysalie?
I want a girl. I don't care which girl it is. I don't care if it's Miss Marvel. I don't care if it's Spider-Woman. I don't care if it's She-Hulk. I don't care who. I just want a female.
Right.
I want a strong woman. I mean, of course, I'm always rooting for, on the other side, Wonder Woman. But if I can't get it from DC because they don't seem to have their act together yet, then I'll take it from Marvel.
Yeah.
I don't even care who it is at this point because I'm not as invested in the women in Marvel as I am in Wonder Woman. So I don't care who it is. I just want it to be a strong woman.
And it's funny because on a show last week, I think it was, John Schnepp, who was a regular on our show, he actually really made a passionate statement that he really wants She-Hulk.
Yeah.
He really wants She-Hulk. I don't think they'll do She-Hulk. I don't think they'll ever do She-Hulk. But She-Hulk would definitely be a welcome addition as well. Plus, I mean, the only woman they have in the Avengers right now is not even a superpowered woman. She pulls a gun.
Well,
bang, bang. Wah, wah. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's a very cool character. But I'd like to see a powerful character in there as well. So that's just my thing.
Cool.
All right, folks. Well, that'll do it for us. Thank you so much for joining us today on this very special live episode of AMC Movie Talk. Listen, while I've got you, if you haven't done so already, take a second and click on the subscribe button. Subscribe to our AMC Movie News YouTube channel. It'll keep you up to date on everything going on in the world of movie news and, of course, our daily AMC Movie Talk show and our weekend AMC Mailbag show. And we might be doing an AMC Mailbag daily pretty soon. You know what? Follow me. If you want to get into this discussion about whether we should do AMC Mailbag daily, follow me on my new Facebook page, which is facebook.com/John Campea AMC. So it's John Campea AMC. Not just John Campea. That's my other Facebook page. But John Campea AMC. I'm going to be putting up a video there maybe later today explaining my pros and cons about doing a mailbag daily show. And then I'm going to invite you guys to jump in the comments there and, tell me what you think we should do. So jump on over there. That'd be pretty cool. Make sure you follow me there too. Like my page over there. Make sure you follow AMC on Twitter at twitter.com/AMC Theaters. Follow AMC Theaters on Facebook at facebook.com/AMC Theaters. And listen, great movies playing right now in AMC Theaters everywhere. Head on over to www.amctheaters.com for your theater, showtime, and movie ticket information. I want to thank, as always, first of all, our lovely host today, Miss Chrisley Candy. Chrisley, where can people find you online?
You guys can find me on Twitter and Instagram at Chrisley, and like my Facebook page because I have no more room for friends. And thank you for all the Wonder Woman support. I love that not only do you want Wonder Woman, but you want me as Wonder Woman.
Chrisley Kennedy as Wonder Woman. Now, the reason you haven't seen me support you in that on my Facebook page is because I am also making a play to play Wonder Woman. I think John Campea for Wonder Woman. I will bring a new dimension. I will bring a freshness, not the same old thing we've seen all the time. I will be an amazing Princess Diana of the Amazons. Anyway, my name's John Campea. Thank you so much for joining us, guys. And until next time, bye-bye.